There's a specific moment a lot of people in their 50s describe the same way. You open your 401k statement, maybe because the news made you nervous, and you stare at the number. Not because it's zero, but because for the first time, you actually do the math. If I retire in 12 years and take out $50,000 a year, this runs out when I'm 74. That's the moment. Not panic, just quiet. I've been close to that feeling, not because of the number itself, but because I realized I'd been treating that account like something I'd get serious about later, without ever deciding when a later actually started. If you're in your 50s and feel behind, it's usually not because you made stupid decisions. A lot of people in this generation got hit by things that weren't in the plan. A layoff at 48. A divorce. Years carrying more than you expected. That's not laziness. That's life running its own schedule. And the question now isn't why you're here. It's what you do with the time you actually have. There are 10 traps that quietly eat retirement in your 50s. Some obvious. Some hiding inside decisions that look perfectly reasonable. One of them is something almost every personal finance video gets wrong. The advice was written for a 30-year-old. Nobody updated the math. If any of this is already sitting in the back of your head, stay with me. Your 50s aren't just another decade with different numbers. The mechanics of how money works for you have changed. When you were 35 and made a financial mistake, saved too little, spent too much, picked the wrong account, time usually fixed it. You had 25 or 30 years for compounding to smooth things out. That's not where you are now. At 52, a 5-year delay doesn't just cost you 5 years. It costs you everything those 5 years could have grown into. Here's what that looks like. Start maxing out your 401k at 50. $24,500 a year, the 2026 limit, and invest for 10 years at a 7% return. By 60, you end up with roughly $338,000. Start the same habit at 55 instead. Same contributions. Same return. You end up with about $142,000. Waiting 5 years costs you nearly $200,000. That's not punishment. That's just the math when the window is shorter. The upside is that your 50s are usually your highest earning decade. You also get catch-up contribution limits younger workers don't. But the margin for delay is gone. 10 traps. Starting with the 3 that quietly pull money out right now. Trap number 1. Not paying your future self first. This happens more often than people realize. Someone earns a decent income, pays the bills, gets through the month, and then tries to save whatever is left. The problem is there is rarely anything left, not because people are reckless. Spending naturally expands to match the money that is available. That is simply how people behave. At 35, that bias is manageable. At 52, it becomes expensive. A teacher in her early 50s struggled with this for years. Every month she planned to save whatever remained after expenses. Every month nothing remained. She changed one thing. She automated a $400 transfer into a Roth IRA the same day her paycheck arrived. The first month felt tight. By month 3, she barely noticed it. Run $400 a month for 12 years at 7%, and you reach roughly $86,000 by age 63. Tax-free inside a Roth, waiting for leftovers usually produces the same result. 0. This is not a discipline problem. It is a system problem. If your system spends first, your future always gets whatever remains. Automate the contribution. Set it right after your paycheck lands. Then slowly increase it over time. Trap 2. Financially supporting adult children before you are financially secure yourself. This one is difficult because it involves real love. But the math still matters. A man in his mid-50s co-signs a $70,000 student loan for his son. The son struggles to find steady work, and the father ends up responsible for $640 a month at 8% interest. Until he is 70. That is more than $115,000 coming out of the exact decade when his retirement savings should be compounding the fastest. Your children have options you do not. They can take loans, choose cheaper schools, and they have decades to recover from financial mistakes. You cannot borrow money for retirement. Helping your children is not wrong, but doing it at the cost of your own stability can put both of you at risk later. Trap 3. Not reviewing your insurance. At 25, being underinsured is a manageable risk. At 52, the stakes are different. You may have a house, a car, retirement accounts, and possibly a business. But the insurance policies you set up years ago may no longer match your life today. If you have stayed with the same home and auto insurer for 10 years without comparing quotes, you may be paying far more than necessary. Some people discover they have been overpaying by hundreds of dollars each month. That is not small money. That is retirement money. There is another risk many people overlook in their 50s. Disability insurance. About 1 in 4 Americans becomes disabled before retirement age. If that happens at 55, Social Security disability averages around $1,500 per month. If your expenses are closer to $4,000, that leaves a gap of about $2,500 every month. Your income is the most important financial asset you have right now. Most people insure their car. Far fewer insure the income that pays for the car. All 3 of these traps share the same pattern. Money quietly leaving your future in ways that feel reasonable in the moment. The next trap is one almost every personal finance video gets wrong. This time we will actually look at the math. A man I know in his late 50s is an accountant. Very comfortable with numbers. For years he looked at Roth accounts, ran a few calculations, and ended up in the same place every time. Unclear whether it was actually better. So he left everything where it was. Traditional 401k, pre-tax. The problem was not information. It was the question he was asking. Most people frame it as Roth or traditional. That is where the confusion starts. The real question is simpler. Will your tax rate in retirement be lower or higher than it is today? If you cannot answer that, you may be making a $300,000 decision by default. When you contribute to a traditional 401k or traditional IRA, you postpone taxes. But every dollar you withdraw in retirement is taxed at whatever rate applies then. For many diligent savers in their 50s, that deal slowly turns against them. Imagine retiring at 65 with $1 million in a traditional 401k. It sounds like $1 million, but every withdrawal is taxable. Take out $50,000 a year. At a 22% federal rate, about $11,000 goes to taxes each year. Over a 30-year retirement, that is roughly $330,000 paid to the IRS. And there is another layer. At age 73, required minimum distributions begin. The government requires withdrawals whether you need the money or not. On a $1 million balance, the first RMD is roughly $36,500. If you also have Social Security, a pension, or part-time income, that forced withdrawal stacks on top. It can push retirees into a higher tax bracket than they expected. Then there is Medicare. If your combined income crosses certain thresholds, currently around $106,000 for a married couple, Medicare adds IRA surcharges to your premiums. For a couple, those surcharges can reach about $5,760 per year. Not because you were reckless, because too much of your money sits in accounts that must be taxed when you withdraw it. For years, I assumed Roth accounts mainly benefited younger workers. Pay taxes early while income is low and let it grow for decades. What changed my mind was running the RMD and Medicare numbers for people in their 50s. People in this decade often have the clearest picture of their future income. They can estimate Social Security, possible pensions, and the size of their retirement accounts. For the first time, they can actually compare today's tax rate with tomorrow's. 3 questions help clarify the decision. First, what is your effective tax rate right now while you are working? Second, what will your retirement income look like? Add Social Security, any pension, and the withdrawals your RMDs will require. Third, is that retirement income higher, lower, or roughly the same as your income today? If retirement income will be much lower, traditional contributions can still make sense. You defer taxes to a cheaper future year. If retirement income will be similar or higher, Roth contributions become more attractive. You pay taxes now and the money grows tax-free from that point forward. If you genuinely do not know, the safest answer is diversification. Build 2 tax buckets. Some pre-tax, some Roth. Options matter more than perfect predictions. Many people in their 50s believe they earn too much to contribute to a Roth IRA. In 2026, direct contributions phase out above $168,000 for single filers and $252,000 for married couples filing jointly. But there is a workaround that has existed in the tax code for years. You contribute to a traditional IRA without taking a deduction, then convert that money into a Roth. This is commonly called a backdoor Roth conversion. There are no income limits for the conversion itself. If your employer offers a Roth 401k option, the limits are even higher. In 2026, you can contribute $24,500 plus an $8,000 catch-up contribution if you are 50 or older. That is $32,500 per year going into an account that will never be taxed again when withdrawn. The goal is not to move everything into Roth accounts. The goal is flexibility. Enter retirement with at least 2 types of tax buckets. One the IRS will tax when you withdraw. One they will not. That flexibility often matters more than squeezing out a slightly higher investment return. Tax diversification is something you build while you are still earning. Once you retire, that window mostly closes. The next traps are less about taxes and more about the slow operational leaks that quietly erode retirement savings over time. Trap 5. Putting off home maintenance. Your house is probably your largest asset, and if you have owned it for a while, it is aging at the same rate you are. The roof from 2007, the HVAC system from 2012, the water heater that has been making noise for 2 years. A neighbor ignored a small roof leak. Nothing dramatic, just a stain on the ceiling after heavy rain. He planned to deal with it later. 2 years passed. By the time a contractor inspected it, mold had spread through the attic insulation. What started as a $4,000 repair became a $28,000 remediation project. He did not have $28,000 in cash. So he withdrew the money from his IRA. He was under 59 and a half. That meant income tax plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty. A $4,000 repair delayed 2 years ended up costing him well over $35,000 once taxes, penalties, and lost investment growth were included. That is not a home maintenance story. It is a retirement story. This decade is the last one where a steady paycheck can absorb planned repairs. At 67, living on a fixed income, a $15,000 HVAC replacement is not an inconvenience. It is a crisis. While you are thinking about the house, ask one honest question. Will this home work for you at 75? 2 stories. Bedrooms upstairs. A yard that needs weekly maintenance. A neighborhood where you must drive everywhere. Those are financial questions. Because modifying a home later, or moving unexpectedly, usually costs more than deciding deliberately now. Trap 6. One spouse handles everything. Many households divide responsibilities. One person manages the finances, the other trusts the system. That works until something changes. A woman in her late 50s loses her husband suddenly. He handled all the accounts. She does not know the passwords or even where everything is held. While sorting through paperwork, she discovers an old 401k from a job he had decades earlier. The account holds $200,000. The listed beneficiary is his ex-wife from a previous marriage. There is nothing she can do. Beneficiary designations override wills and estate plans. Whatever name is on that form receives the money. The fix is simple. Log into every account. 401k IRA, life insurance, HSA check who is listed as beneficiary and update it if needed. If one partner manages the finances, schedule time together to review everything. Account locations, passwords, and what happens if one person must take over tomorrow. Financial clarity is one of the quiet ways people care for each other. Trap 7. Ignoring your health. Here is the financial side. Fidelity estimates that the average couple retiring at 65 will spend about $345,000 on healthcare during retirement. That does not include long-term care. It covers premiums, prescriptions, and out-of-pocket costs. That number depends heavily on the health you arrive with. Chronic illness, falls, and preventable conditions drive a large share of healthcare spending after 70. And there is no investment account that offsets years of avoidable health decline. Your 50s are often the last decade where lifestyle changes can significantly alter that trajectory. What you build now shows up in your medical costs 15 years later. Trap 8. No emergency fund. This advice sounds basic, but it becomes critical in your 50s. If someone loses a job at 32, the search might take a few months. At 52, the timeline often stretches much longer. AARP research shows that the average job search for workers over 50 lasts around 9 months. Without savings, that gap forces difficult choices. A man in his early 50s loses his job in August. By March, he withdraws $15,000 from his IRA to cover living expenses. At a 22% tax rate plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty, about $4,800 disappears to taxes and penalties. The remaining $10,200 keeps him afloat briefly. The original $15,000 that could have compounded for another decade is gone. Not because he was irresponsible, because he had no financial floor. Start small, $1,000, then 1 month of expenses, then 3, eventually 6 months. Keep it liquid in a high-yield savings account. An emergency fund is not just savings. It is the barrier that prevents a bad month from turning into a bad decade. These 4 traps can usually be fixed with small adjustments. The next 2 traps are different. From the outside, they often look like financial success. Add up everything you own, your house, your car, your retirement accounts, whatever cash you have. Now ask a different question. How much of that could you actually access within 30 days without selling something major or paying a penalty? Not your net worth on paper. Real liquidity. For many people in their 50s, that number is surprisingly small. And that matters because retirement does not run on net worth. It runs on cash flow, on money you can actually reach when you need it. Keep that in mind for the next 2 traps. Trap 9. Carrying consumer debt into your 50s without a plan to eliminate it. Debt in your 50s is not just expensive. It drains the last investing window that really matters. Every dollar sent to a credit card at 18% interest is a dollar that cannot compound in a retirement account during the final decade where compounding still has time to work. Imagine a balance that costs $500 a month in payments at 18%. That is $6,000 a year going to a lender. If that same $500 per month went into a Roth IRA for 10 years at a 7% return, it would grow to about $82,000 by age 60. Tax-free. Instead, the money disappears into interest and the opportunity is gone. Add up every dollar of consumer debt you carry. Credit cards, personal loans, medical debt, car loans. Everything except the mortgage. Divide that number by 60. That becomes your minimum monthly payoff target over the next 5 years. Because arriving at retirement still paying Visa is not retirement. It is just a job you no longer show up to. Trap 10. Treating your house as your retirement plan. From the outside, this often looks like success. You bought a home in your 30s. You paid the mortgage for decades. Now the house might be worth $600,000 and the remaining loan is maybe $100,000. It feels like security. That equity looks like a cushion, but equity is not a retirement plan. It is value locked inside an asset you live in. Accessing it usually requires selling the house or borrowing against it. Consider two people. Alex is 50. His home is worth $600,000 with $200,000 left on the mortgage. His retirement accounts total $50,000 and he has no emergency fund. Ben is also 50. His home is paid off and worth $500,000. He has $300,000 in his 401k, $50,000 in a Roth account, and $20,000 in cash savings. The difference becomes clearer over time. Alex continues making mortgage payments and helping his daughter with rent. His retirement accounts grow slowly. By 65, he might have around $200,000 saved if everything goes reasonably well. Ben has no mortgage payment. That freed cash flow allows him to max out his retirement accounts every year. His $350,000 can grow to roughly $1,500,000 by 65 at a modest return. Both owned homes. The difference was what existed outside the house. A home is a single asset tied to one location. You cannot sell 10% of it when you need cash. You cannot rebalance it or withdraw small amounts. A retirement portfolio is different. It is liquid, diversified, and designed to generate income over time. The goal is not to sell your house. The goal is to build enough wealth outside the house that you could still function without it. Real financial resilience comes from assets you can actually use. And there is one more trap that rarely gets discussed, even though it is affecting this generation more than any before it. There is a version of this trap that appears slowly, and most people do not notice it until it is already affecting their retirement plan. A man in his mid-50s had a simple retirement plan. Steady job, reasonable savings, and a goal of retiring around 65. The numbers worked as long as nothing major changed. Then his mother called. She is 82. Social Security brings in $1,800 a month. For years that covered her basic expenses. Then rent increased and prescription costs rose. The margin disappeared. He began sending her $1,200 a month. Look at the math. 9 years until retirement. $1,200 every month for 9 years. That is $129,600 removed from his retirement window. Money that was never planned, never invested, and never compounded. He did not choose it. But he also could not ignore it. Many people in their 50s are facing a similar situation. Their parents are living into their 80s and 90s, often with limited savings and rising living costs. Social Security alone rarely covers rent, healthcare, and daily expenses anymore. If your parents are in their 70s or 80s, it helps to understand their financial situation. Do they have long-term care insurance? Do they have savings that could cover assisted living, which can cost between $4,000 and $8,000 per month, depending on the state? Is there an actual plan, or just an assumption that things will work out? These conversations are not easy. Some parents are open about money. Others have spent their entire lives being independent and resist discussing it. But silence does not protect anyone. It simply means the financial reality may appear later inside your own retirement plan. If you can have the conversation, even partially, it helps. Knowing whether a plan exists or not allows you to prepare. And if the conversation is not possible yet, the best protection is making sure your own finances have enough margin to absorb an unexpected call. There is no single solution for every family. But ignoring the situation rarely makes it easier. 11 traps in total. They all point to the same pattern. So those are 10 traps, plus one most people never mention. Each one comes from the same pattern. Decisions made by default slowly become the plan. The transfer you never automated. The loan you co-signed. The retirement account you never diversified. The repair you postponed. The beneficiary form you filled out years ago and never checked again. None of that usually comes from bad intentions. Life simply gets busy, and the consequences feel far away. Until they are not. If you are in your 50s and feel behind, one thing is worth remembering. Starting late is not the same as starting wrong. Yes, the math is harder when the timeline is shorter, but harder is not impossible. The worst scenario is reaching 62 and wishing you had started at 52. 3 ideas to leave with. First, automate before your brain gets involved. Set the transfer the day after your paycheck arrives and gradually increase it. Systems work better than motivation. Second, run the Roth math for your own situation. Compare your tax rate today with the income you expect in retirement once Social Security and required withdrawals are included. If retirement taxes will be lower, traditional accounts may still work. If they will be similar or higher, Roth contributions may make more sense. If the answer is unclear, build both. Third, focus on flexibility. Retirement works best when your money sits in different types of accounts, with different tax rules and some liquidity. The goal is having choices instead of being forced into them. None of this requires perfection. It requires direction and a few systems that keep working even when you are busy. Starting later with a real plan is still better than never starting at all. If something in this list felt familiar, leave a comment and mention which trap you are dealing with right now. Those conversations shape what we explore in the next videos. And if you want to go deeper, the next video walks through how to calculate Roth conversions for your own numbers. It picks up exactly where this discussion ends.